Boycott, sanction, and divest. That's a modern cause that's received a lot of criticism from almost all of the liberal class. Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, Israel is a fascist state and has been for a long time, and that has become ever more obvious in the past 22 months or so. It is engaged in a genocidal war against the entire population of Gaza and the West Bank, the Palestinian population of the West Bank anyway. And this is obvious to 100 different, major human rights organizations around the world, and obvious to the leadership of many different countries. And, it seems to be obvious to everybody except for the leadership of the U.S. and certain other countries that make Israel possible and have always been the countries that have made Israel possible. We should not be having anything to do with genocide, and it behooves all people that care about people to stop trading and selling arms and giving money to Israel. At the very least, stop sending them arms. Stop supporting their economy and sending them arms so that they can kill children. That's an obvious thing. And anybody who disagrees with that, I don't know what kind of person they are or what they mean if they call themselves liberal or conservative. If you believe that it's good to export arms to a country that is systematically and intentionally massacring, starving children every morning and has been doing it for the past several months, then, I don't know what you are, but, it's something very bad.
Yeah, well, I don't know why it's not obvious to people, but I see, cowboys and Indians all over again. You've got these white Northern Europeans who are taking over the indigenous people. And I thought everybody in America learned the lesson that the Indians were the good guys. And now here the liberals of America are siding with the people who are destroying the Indians.
Yeah, and also, I mean, of course, I grew up in the Northeast, and certainly among my friends in the well-off suburb in Connecticut that I grew up in, everybody was sympathetic to the Indians, but then we didn't know any Indians. And when I got older and started traveling, and you go to places where there are reservations, and like South Dakota or wherever, and Arizona, I mean all over the West especially, and just as traveling around in other countries that have a history of being settler colonial countries, which is a complex phenomenon, and that I don't want to simplify by just using these terms that some people might misunderstand. But the history of the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia all has a lot in common, and they're all settler colonial countries in terms of how they were set up by the British Empire in the first place, and you find in all these countries lots of open racism, especially when you go to areas where there are indigenous people living, and of course, as we know, growing up in any of these countries, it's the same kind of phenomenon going. You're talking about disenfranchised people who have been had their land and taken. They've been for generations. Their children have been forced to go to. Children have been kidnapped and sent to schools where half of them died before they turned 18, according to the history of Canada, for example. And I'm sure it's no different here. But there we got numbers. It's been a horrendous, unspeakably horrendous experience for indigenous people in all these lands, and then that has results. Later on that has results. You see the results. You get 50% rate of alcoholism in a lot of Indian country. And that has impacts on society there, on society in the border towns. I don't have to get way into why that has an impact, And of course, by the same token, the history of people being dispossessed of their land and everything else in Palestine, it also has consequences, and the consequences are not the same sorts of consequences. The situation is very different. Palestine was an urban society that was settled. You didn't have the massive die-offs from disease, lots and lots of really big differences. This was the home of, letters and mathematics, and it's a very different situation. But in the sense of the reaction, of course, there's going to be reaction, and so of course, in the case of colonizing Palestine, the reaction has been a very violent one, and why wouldn't it be? The reaction to colonizing North America was also violent at various times. Overall, maybe less so because of the odds that people were facing, and the whole situation was so completely unequal. Trying to resist was a very different situation here than in Palestine. But there's going to be a reaction, and then people are left trying to make sense of that. And so you have a situation where for generations now there's been Palestinians who have had their land stolen, their lives ruined, their children imprisoned and tortured, raped by Israelis, and they react in many cases very, very violently to that reality. And then then the Israelis are left trying to figure out why are they so mad? Why do they hate us? What did we do to them? Because they in many cases either don't know or they don't know the extent of it. Just like here, like you remember after 9/11, everybody's asking, why do they hate us? Like, where have you been? Like, have you noticed anything about what U.S. foreign policy has been doing since like 1991 that would lead to this? It's people don't know. People don't even know what countries we've bombed before. If they don't know what countries we've invaded, how could they possibly know why anybody would hate us?
Yeah, and give them a bunch of cookies on their smartphone so that they spend time watching YouTube videos instead of reading Howard Zinn.
Yeah.
Or Noam Chomsky or anybody else.
Since social media, it's been so much worse than it ever was in my lifetime before. And not to kind of paint history with, or even my earlier life, with rose-tinted glasses. I think that, all sorts of problems, all the sorts of problems we have today in terms of like conflict on the left, if you can call it that, like in every social movement, the sorts of conflicts that we've long had between people who want to actually accomplish something and people who want to rise through the ranks and take down the competition and whatever, be opportunists or be narcissists or feel good about themselves by grandstanding or whatever it is. There's like, that's, I think everybody has always, that I know of every generation, people always all comment on these differences, these different factions that you could, if you could call it factions, or different sorts of tendencies within social movements, like people that are in it for the right reasons and actually care about the cause and actually want to win and change the world, and those who are really just trying to get a good job in an NGO after they do their time in the social movement, whatever. There's just a lot of opportunism out there, and a lot of bad reasons for people to get involved with things. But before social media, it felt like there was a real conversation going on around this kind of thing, and the more sensible people were often winning the argument. And I saw that happen and participated in it as well, in the argument, like during the global justice movement, when there were a lot of people trying to convince the Black Bloc that actually they could do all kinds of useful things other than smash windows. Like if they want to do, sort of more militant actions, like, a lot of us were trying to kind of guide them in more constructive directions. And that was working. That was working 24 years ago. And it seems like forever ago now, because what's happened with the so-called diversity of tactics argument winning later. The diversity of tactics argument did not win 24 years ago. It lost. It won later. And diversity of tactics is some term that probably somebody came up with in the FBI to try to make dumpster burning seem progressive and useful and constructive or something. But it's been a complete disaster. I mean, you go to a protest and burn a dumpster, and most of the people leave and never come back to another protest. That's what it does. When you do these kinds of tactics in the wrong kinds of circumstances.
It's happening now, like it has before, at the universities in a time of war. Put people together, they'll communicate, talk about things like college and state, talk about the research that built the Iron Dome, talk about their relatives starving back at home, talk about tuition and where the money's spent and where all the buildings in Gaza went. Wake up each morning and the headlines say how many hundreds of Palestinians died today, how many thousands were killed in the past week. People get together, people speak. The newscasters say with surety the campuses lack security. Meanwhile, across the ocean wide, Palestinian genocide. People are saying they won't leave till they win, and then the police are sent in. Beaten and arrested, staff and students, and to try to silence this growing movement, they're punishing people for making it known that the direct connection can be easily shown. How the investments of this institution are funding another final solution. Where it goes is anyone's guess. After all, this is the U.S. Battles have been lost and won, but with bombs being dropped every day by the ton, with the orphaned and famished beneath the sky, waiting for the moment when it's their turn to die. Some people just can't look away. They have to set up a tent on the campus and say, boycott, sanction, and divest. 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 Boycott, sanction.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about a hero, actually. You wrote a song for Julian Assange called Behind These Prison Walls, right?
Yeah.
Talk about Julian a little bit and what you want people to know about his situation today.
Well, I mean, one thing, there's so much to say about Julian. One thing I would say is the campaign to free him won. And that's something that people should know, because victories are few and far between, it often feels like, and sometimes they happen. And I mean, his wife, Stella, is one of the most impressive organizers on the planet. And that's also true of a whole bunch of the people involved with WikiLeaks and involved with his support. Some of them are people that are old friends of his. Others are people who had never met him and still probably haven't. But along with a lot of really pretty wild, off-the-wall people coming to his support, a whole lot of really, really competent organizers and artists came to his support as well. And the people that were involved with gaining his freedom in a bunch of very prominent cases were artists and people that had a great appreciation for good art and music. One example is the filmmaker Niels Ladefoge, a Danish filmmaker who's been following around Julian and Stella for years. You never see him unless you're really looking, because he's not going to be appearing in his own films. But the reason why whenever you hear Stella giving a speech, she sounds so good and looks so good, it's because he's filming it. and recording it. And that's why, otherwise it would be just like other people giving speeches. It would often be inaudible, or it would be some cell phone recording. The reason it's always so good is because of him. And the whole project was like that, for Julian's release. So, like when I first was, well, I was singing songs and otherwise being involved with protests in support of Assange and WikiLeaks since before he was arrested in the first place. But there was one time when I was singing at the Ecuadorian embassy where he was essentially being held in sort of house a strange situation after the government in Ecuador changed and it was no longer sympathetic, and he was still sort of getting asylum in their embassy. But and Nils showed up there to film me singing at his at the below his window, and made a film out of that video out of that got a lot of probably millions of views. And that's the kind of thing that he was doing all the time. So, and he'd collaborate with people to get the views, And in the case of the song Behind These Prison Walls, that was just one of several different really impressive collaborations between me and Nils and other people to create what were essentially, music videos that were not necessarily, sort of being promoted as such, but that's what they were, and so after it was about a year after that he had filmed me at the Ecuadorian embassy that I was coming back to London, and I just contacted Nils and said, well, while I'm in London, do you want to do something? Like maybe we film something in front of Belmarsh where Julian had just been taken to the prison. And so he said, yeah, great idea. And I hadn't yet written that song, but then when I knew we were going to be meeting at Belmarsh and doing a filming in a couple days, then I wrote a song that had the prison in the background in the song, So that was especially good to have that refrain when you knew that you were going to be filming with the prison in the background. So I think it was really effective, and it got millions of views online, and yeah, that's so they really used art well in their campaigns, and or at least when I suggested it, they were very receptive, which means they used it well.
Yeah, the video is really stark. Kind of reminds me of how I feel when I listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall. It's just that it's a beautiful film and very moving and a great song.
Thank you.
Prison walls, there's a man who's won awards for the work that he has done and all that it affords, such as the knowledge of the horrors committed in our name. They can't stop the message, so the messenger gets blamed. Behind these prison walls, in solitary confinement, in a land of rolling hills and royalty and other such refinement, is someone who is a hero to whistleblowers everywhere, who help them tell the world of the crimes of Tony Blair. Behind these prison walls, you will find a mortal man. The reason why we know what happened in Afghanistan, when the soldiers of the empire, whose sun set long before, were torturing civilians in their terror war. Behind these prison walls is a part of WikiLeaks, an eloquent orator, but you won't hear him speak. Locked away in silence, one who knows too well how those in power act when there's another war to sell. Behind these prison walls is one who stands accused of exactly what offenses the U.S. has refused to say precisely which, or to try to clear the mist, or to explain how he's not the same as the other journalists. Behind these prison walls is a person they deprive of most of the things in life that keep us all alive. A person being tortured as we stand here now for revealing the war crimes. Why, when, where, how? Behind these prison walls, our very right to be informed of what the hell is going on is the teacup in this storm. With knowledge there is power, so the solution by the crown, a 24-hour-a-day indefinite lockdown behind these prison walls.
So the next one is Tunisia, 2011. Oh my gosh, what a sad story, but inspiring too. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So these videos are kind of like from much of my career, past 20 years, and it's basically a relatively random selection of some of the best music videos that I've done with other people who were good filmmakers and stuff like that. So Tunisia 2011, the song is about the uprising in Tunisia that happened at the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, that was sparked by Mohamed Bouazizi immolating himself, and he was a fruit vendor in Tunisia and Tunis. No, not in Tunis, in another town. And after he burned himself alive, basically in protest against corruption and poverty, that set off the whole revolution in Tunisia. So, which then also inspired a similar, identical kind of event in Egypt, where they also overthrew their government for a while, and of course, all over the Arab world, there was rebellion. And of course, when I wrote the song, it was a much more hopeful time before the Syrian civil war and before so much of the Arab revolts were able to get used by nefarious outside forces for all sorts of different purposes. But at that time, it was a very impressive and hopeful time when, very violent, a lot of people being killed, but two fairly large and prominent, Middle Eastern governments being overthrown by popular, mostly non-violent rebellions in the case of Tunisia and Egypt. So it was really quite a period that inspired a lot of people.
In the small Tunisian town of Sidi Bouzid, Mohamed Bouazizi, a vegetable vendor, set himself on fire after being humiliated by the police and had his stall taken away from him. His suicide act is said to be the instigator of uprisings across the Arab region within the past 6 months.
He burned himself for the sake of all of us.
Mohammed had a vegetable stand. This was his family's plight. ever since his father died on a construction site. He was one of 6 siblings. Now this would be his fate, working the streets of the city to put food on everybody's plate. Couldn't afford the bribes, cops would make him pay, so sometimes they'd knock his cart over, get him back that way. Last December they smashed his scales, put him in his place. Then for good measure, the cops spat in Mohammed's face. Went to see the governor, maybe there was something he could do. Word came from on high, we don't talk to people like you. Mohammed Bouazizi now was living on a wire. Went and bought some paint thinner and he set himself on fire. Word spread through the region, soon you'd hear it same. Proud and desperate people going up in flames. Sometimes windows open, sometimes the floor it creaks, but no one knew what would happen in only a few weeks. When the dictator ran away, when the dictator ran away, tried to hold a march for the immolated dead. Police met them there with truncheons and bullets to the head. People headed to the Capitol, they would not be deterred. Sometimes this is just what happens to a dream deferred. The police kept up the attack, thousands wounded, hundreds killed. With blood the streets were covered, with gas the air was filled. But the people held their ground, Tunisia's daughters and their sons. One day the cops had enough to just put down their guns. When the dictator ran away, when the dictator ran away, now someone had to deal with this rebellious riffraff. So Ben Ali called a meeting of his chiefs of staff. He said these terrorists have decided to go out on the attack. It's time for you, the army, to take our country back. It's time for you, the army, to go and make a stand. Show these terrorists that we are in command. Time to gun these criminals down, that's what he said. Now go. The general got his orders and the general said no. When the dictator ran away, when the dictator ran away, Ben Ali got in a plane, tried to go to France, but he was a hot potato, so he did a little dance. Ended up in Jeddah to live there in exile, while his fellow warlords shiver from the Tigris to the Nile. All across Arabia you can hear them talk and sing. Those who dare throw off their shackles, let's shout, let freedom ring. Where we'll be by next year is for anyone to say. Many will recall where they were on the day when the dictator ran away, when the dictator ran away.
So now we have a couple of animated videos. The first is called Riot Dog. Who was the Riot Dog, and how did you make an animated video?
So when I first, basically, I was making children's albums before I did the Riot Dog and I'm a Better Anarchist Than You animated videos. I went through a period where for about 2 years, when I first had a kid 19 years ago, where all I was writing for about 2 years was children's songs, and I think I was good at it, and I made 2 good albums of children's songs, and they got a fair bit of attention in sort of children's music circles in different places. But then I went back to writing my normal sort of songs about massacres and stuff, and haven't written a children's song since. But it was 2 years where that's all I was doing, and I was trying to sort of break into the children's music market. And so basically, and that was a time where I had, well, that was before Spotify started their free tier, so I was making about twice as much money selling CDs, compared to since Spotify. So I had actual disposable income to work with occasionally, and the CD projects were often, I was spending many thousands of dollars every year, sometimes over $10,000 in a year to record a CD every year, and you make that back pretty quick after a little touring and selling all those CDs. That's all in the past. I miss it, but it was during that kind of flush period of financial well-being when I hired the animator after making a great album that I spent $12,000 recording. I hired the animator, who worked for so cheap that it's barely actually, the term hired is very, I'm not sure if it's quite the right term, but anyway, I spent thousands of dollars on getting these videos made. If he was being paid by the hour, it'd probably be about minimum wage, but he made some great videos for the children's songs. And then later I got him to make 2 more animations, one for Riot Dog and one for I'm a Better Anarchist Than You. And I first discovered Bjorn Magne Stustdal, the animator from Oslo, Norway, because he made an animation of Cows with Guns when Dana Lines first put out Cows with Guns, and that animation was just fantastic, as I'm sure you've seen it. And that's, so I asked Dana, who's this animator? I want to get him to do something. So that's how I first got in touch with that animator. And the song Riot Dog the animation for the song came out right at the right time. It was like just at the time when Lukanikos was at his peak of fame. And Lukanikos was, in many different countries at many times in history, there are legendary dogs that participate in protest movements. And Lukanikos was one of those. And at the time where there were massive protests against the banks and against the European capitalists and everybody else in Athens and elsewhere in Greece, it was like a daily thing with thousands and thousands of people in the street, tear gas all over the place, riot cops, military cops, and really quite a crazy scene for years in Athens. And I went there on several occasions during that time. It was just madness. As soon as you get out at the airport, it's like, how does this country even stay together? They're having riots just constantly. Police everywhere, all the time, heavily armed, guarding every building. It was just, I've never been to such a, outside of Israel, I've never been to such a militarized place as Athens was at that time. But whenever the protests would start around there, there would be Lukanikos, and nobody even seemed to know where he lived. Apparently he lived with an elderly couple, and they would just let him go out, and he'd go join the protests, and he'd come back at night. But during the day, where he was hanging out with the protesters, and he became famous with the international media, actually, because he'd often be just the one. There'd be like a cloud of tear gas, and all the protesters would be lined up on one end, away from the tear gas, but Lukanikos would just be right in the middle of the cloud of tear gas, like barking at the cops. He died quite young as a result of complications from all the tear gas, actually. But yeah, while he was alive, he was fearless, and also even known to play fetch with the tear gas canisters, so that bring him back to the line of the cops and that kind of thing. So that, all sorts of I think he bit a police's shield once. I mean, these are the sorts of incidents that made him especially famous. People loved him in Greece.
Wow, that's great.
Lots of folks are revolting. They've had enough of this shit. The rich are getting richer. They're saying that's it. But with Luke, it's different, that's clear. As he emerges from the fog, let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. It's a fight between people, but he is no pawn. He knows exactly which side he's on. In the machine of capital, he is no cog. Let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. Towards him, he kicks it back at the fuzz. He acts a bit different than a normal dog does. He's got a fan page on Facebook, but he's got no time for applaud. Let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. Let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog.
And then, of course, there's I don't know, is it the closest thing you have to a theme song?
I'm a better anarchist than you. I mean, it has become a theme song, and I'm just, it's really like one of those songs that, I mean, probably the song I've written that has become most well known is probably St. Patrick Battalion, about the Mexican, the Irish who fought for Mexico in the Mexican-American War, and that song has been covered by bands all over the world, and especially in Mexico and Ireland, and it's the most downloaded song, I think, on the various platforms. But I'm a Better Anarchist Than You is right up there with St. Patrick Battalion as far as number of streams, and it's always in the top 5 on Spotify on my Spotify page. And I think that is just such a wonderful. I mean, when you look at all the songs of mine that are the most popular on Spotify, I think all of that, it's such a positive commentary on humanity that these are the songs that they particularly identify with. I mean, songs like St. Patrick Battalion, which is all about international solidarity and sticking up for, making terrible sacrifices to defend those being invaded by a greater power. And that's a beautiful sentiment that people identify with so viscerally all over the world. And also with I'm a Better Anarchist Than You, the fact that it is anarchist oriented, often anarchist identified young people who are the ones who love this song the most. It's the very people that I'm making fun of in the song, the very people who are friends with lots of people for whom every verse of that song is descriptive. They are the ones who like that song the best. And I think that is a real positive commentary. And this is even in the age of social media. That's when the song was written. It was post-Facebook. Around 2007 or so I wrote it. So, I mean, even with all the crazy talk that happens on social media about, identity politics and all that, people still identify with that song, and they still like it.
It's a very funny song.
I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes I skateboard, so fuck off all you drivers and your yummy hordes, sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives or the donuts that I've found. wear leather, and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel, because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to Anti-Flag and Crass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed readers, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in voting, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case, and only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows by the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you.
My name is John Riley. I'll have you here only a while. I left my dear home of Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. And when I got to America, it was my duty to go and enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. Well, it was there in those pueblos and hillsides that I learned the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. So amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought neath the green flag of St. Patrick, and blazing with Aringo Bra, bright with the harp and the shamrock, and Libertad para Mexicana. Just 50 years after Wolftown, and 5,000 miles away, oh, the Yanks call us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought them in Montemoros, where their volunteers were raping the nuns. And Monterey and Cerro Gordo, we fought on as Ireland's sons. We were the red-headed fighters for freedom, amidst these brown-skinned women and men. Oh, side by side we fought against tyranny. I dare say we'd do it again. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought fought on the Mexican side. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought them in 5 major battles. Churubusco was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each murder blast. Most of us died on that hillside in the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side.